Okay, so let's dive into this. We're looking at a truth today that honestly cuts against so much of what we feel sometimes. This idea that we're never really alone, even when solitude feels overwhelming.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time, we talked about God's sovereignty, his, ultimate control over the big picture. If that's the macro view, today we're zooming right in. How does that huge power become, like, personal,
Yeah.
intimate, and accompanying love? We're talking about Immanuel, that promise, and why it might just be the deepest source of comfort and maybe the only real basis for courage we have.
That's a perfect way to frame it. Because Emmanuel, well, it often gets softened, doesn't it? Put on Christmas cards. But when you look at the sources, it's what you might call a present continuous promise. It's not just God was with us or God will be with us. It's this constant declaration, I am with you right now.
Yeah.
Even when you're in the wilderness or the valley or just sitting in silence, it's meant to be active, real. Okay, God is with us. The literal meaning is pretty clear. But let's ground this in the story. Where does this huge idea first show up? What was happening historically that made saying God is with us so radical?
Right, you have to go back to the Old Testament for the prophetic start. Specifically, Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Immanuel.
Mm-hmm.
And the context there is just, wow, it's crucial. This wasn't whispered in a peaceful garden. It was given to King Ahaz of Judah.
Ahaz, right. Things were bad then, weren't they?
Bad is putting it mildly. Judah was facing this massive threat, caught between powerful enemies, utterly terrified. The text says their hearts were trembling like the trees of the forest are shaken by the wind. Just sheer panic.
And Ahaz wasn't exactly looking to God for help, was he? He was trying to make deals, looking for human solutions.
Exactly. He was turning to Assyria, the superpower of the day, putting his trust in military strength, ignoring God's counsel. He was looking everywhere but towards God. So this Immanuel sign, this promise of a child meaning God is with us, it landed like a bombshell. It wasn't just a simple comfort. It was also a challenge, almost a warning. It declared that God was still in charge of history. He was still with his people, even when they were disobeying him. And his presence sometimes meant, well, a difficult path forward judgment, purification, not just instant rescue.
That adds so much depth. It wasn't just, don't worry, I'm here. It was more like, I'm here, and my presence changes everything, even your political calculations and fears. It showed up right when God seemed most absent, didn't it?
Precisely. When human panic and self-reliance were at their peak, which of course sets the stage for the ultimate fulfillment.
In Jesus, Matthew's gospel makes that link explicit.
Yes, Matthew 1.23 quotes Isaiah directly. The promised child arrives, God truly with us.
Now, when we talk about Jesus being Emmanuel, how does that shift things theologically? There's this deep concept theologians call kenosis, Christ sort of emptying himself. How does that help us understand how Jesus could truly be with us in our deepest solitude?
That's where the raw power of Immanuel really hits home. Jesus didn't just bring an idea about God's presence or, a warm feeling. He was God, right here, flesh and blood. And because of that kenosis, that self-emptying you mentioned, he didn't just, observe our suffering from a distance. He jumped right in. He felt our pain, our sorrow, our loneliness, deep, profound solitude.
Yeah.
Think about it. Temptation in the wilderness, rejection by his own people, and then the cross, total abandonment. He experienced the absolute depth of human isolation before he offered redemption.
So Emmanuel means the God who is with us is also the God who has already been exactly where we might find ourselves. He gets it.
He absolutely gets it from the inside out.
Okay, that's the historical and theological foundation. It's solid. But here's the struggle for so many people, isn't it? The gap. We can nod along, yes, God is with me intellectually, but then life happens. Fear hits, or that crushing loneliness washes over you, and the feeling of being alone just shouts louder than the belief. How do we bridge that? How does Emmanuel move from a concept we believe to a reality we actually experience?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the first step, maybe the hardest one, is to anchor ourselves in this. God's presence is based on his word, on what he has promised, not on the ups and downs of our feelings. It has to be grasped by faith, sometimes especially when feelings scream the opposite.
But hang on, isn't there a danger there? If we say, just trust the word, ignore your feelings, aren't we kind of dismissing the very real pain of loneliness? How do we acknowledge that pain without just giving into it?
That's a really important tension to hold. We absolutely validate the feeling. God understands that Jesus lived it, but we don't let the feeling become the ultimate truth teller. The feeling is real, but the promise is more real. And interestingly, the sources often show God's presence being recognized most clearly, not in passive waiting, but in action. in response to a command.
Like with Joshua?
Exactly like Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9. God gives him this terrifying task. Go conquer the land. Enemies, giants, the whole deal. And what does he say right alongside the command? Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
Wow. The command to do the scary thing comes packaged with the promise of his presence.
That's the aha moment right there. His presence isn't necessarily felt most strongly when we're safe and comfortable. It's demonstrated, it's proven, when we step out in obedience, facing the fear. Wherever you go, his presence isn't the reward after we're brave. It's the reason we can even dare to be brave. You don't wait to feel him, then move. You move because he promised he's there, and you find him on the way.
Okay, so we find him in the challenge, in the obedience. But what about when we just fail? When we stumble, feel weak, broken? When the feeling isn't just fear, but maybe shame or deep grief? When we feel totally abandoned?
Oh. And for those moments, we have perhaps the most intimate picture of Immanuel in the Old Testament. Psalm 23, David writes, verse 4, Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me.
Through the valley. It's a journey, isn't it? Not an instant teleport out. So are we supposed to be fighting to get out of the valley immediately or learning how to live in it with him?
The language is key. I walk through. David is talking about God's presence while he's still in the darkness. He hasn't escaped yet. God is the companion in the middle of it all. And look at the comfort source. His rod and his staff.
The shepherd's tools.
Exactly. The staff guides, pulls sheep close. The rod defends against threats, sometimes corrects. The comfort isn't the absence of the shadow or the fear. It's the tangible reality that the shepherd is right there, actively guiding, actively protecting, inside the danger zone.
So the comfort comes entirely from his active presence, not from the situation suddenly getting better.
Precisely. His presence is the constant. It's meant to define how we see our situation, not the other way around. Our feelings, our circumstances, they don't dictate his presence. His presence is the anchor that changes how we navigate those feelings and circumstances.
Okay, this brings us to the practical side. People listening know the theology, but experiencing it, that's different. Some people seem to feel God's presence so vividly, others really struggle. The promise is always true, but recognizing it varies. So what are the practical things, the channels we can tune into to help us recognize the presence that's already there?
That's the right question. The sources point towards, I think, three main pathways that help shift this from just head knowledge to, well, heart reality. Pathway 1, the Word. But not just reading it like a textbook. Personal devotion, what some call quiet time. This is where the written word can become a living word for you right now. When you read Immanuel, you're not just reading history. Because of Jesus, that promise is spoken to you today. It makes his presence tangible in your current situation.
So less like study and more like an actual meeting.
Exactly, an encounter. Pathway 2, prayer. We often approach prayer like we're, shouting across a distance, trying to get God's attention. But prayer is really a dialogue with the Lord who is already there. Try this small shift. Instead of jumping right into your list of needs, start by simply acknowledging him. Just say, Lord, thank you that you're here. Saying it out loud or even silently. Grounding yourself in that manual promise, it starts to retune your spiritual awareness, helping you recognize the presence that's a given rather than begging for him to show up.
That changes the whole posture of prayer, doesn't it? Okay, word, prayer. What about other people? Loneliness often feels worse when we feel disconnected from community.
Which brings us to the third crucial pathway, community. We all know Matthew 18:20, right? Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I among them.
Yeah, it's quoted a lot, sometimes just to get people to show up to things, but is there more to it? How does his presence actually show up in the community?
It becomes tangible. God often chooses to make his presence, his comfort, his guidance, his protection felt through the concrete actions of our brothers and sisters. Think about it. Practical help in a crisis, a word of encouragement at the right time, someone sharing your burden, even just the look in someone's eyes, a hug from another believer. These are real-world echoes of Immanuel. We become signs of his presence for each other.
Word, prayer, community, those are the ways we intentionally engage then. Ways to help rewrite our internal story from I'm alone and scared to he is with me, so there is hope.
They're the practices, yes, that help us live in the reality that even when we don't feel him, his presence is the most certain thing about our lives.
This has been incredibly grounding, a deep dive into a promise that holds steady, regardless of how we feel. Immanuel, God with us through everything, even the deepest shadows.
And if you're listening right now and you're really struggling with that feeling of being alone, Maybe the pain is so loud it feels like God must be distant. Can I offer one practical thought, maybe an action? When that fear or loneliness washes over you, try making Psalm 23.4 personal. Actually insert your name. It sounds simple, but it can be powerful. Say it to yourself. Though I, your name, walk through this valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. It helps connect the big promise to your specific current struggle.
That makes it very immediate.
And here's a final thought, maybe a bit provocative. What if that intense feeling of solitude doesn't actually prove God's absence? What if instead it reveals the true weight of what you're going through? Precisely because He is standing there with you in it. You feel the crushing weight because the struggle is real, yes, but the Immanuel promise means you're not bearing it alone, even when it feels like you are. Ultimately, it comes down to a choice, doesn't it? Faith over feelings, promise over appearances. If you feel alone right now, try this honest confession. Lord, I feel lonely, I feel afraid, but you said you are here, so I'm choosing to trust your presence. That simple, honest act of faith, that's often the beginning, the start of experiencing His invisible presence as the most profound reality you know.
His accompanying presence, the most certain reality of our lives, whatever our feelings might say. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the promise of Immanuel.